Hi guys. I'm just coming on here to talk a little bit more about the Venus cycle because SkyDancer is opening for enrollment, and I just, there's a few more things I want to say about what the journey is like and about how the Venus cycle works as and working with astrology can be such a useful spiritual tool. So I guess I want to begin by doing some disclaimers about how I personally work with astrology and how I see it work within other places that um, can actually be a hindrance versus helpful. So in my approach to astrology, I always want astrology to point us back to ourselves. Not be used as a tool to take us out of our body or to be used as a tool that essentially points us to offling like blame onto like a transit. So you could probably see what I'm saying, like, oh, well, the Mars was by my sun that day, and so I'm not responsible for the fact that I got angry, that kind of thing. So we always want to use astrology, like how we could flip that is like, wow, how do my more assertive, aggressive kind of archetypal qualities show up when they hit my light of consciousness? Like, can I look at what my patterns and my behavior is when I'm triggered by something and become aggressive? And so we're always using astrology in that way, in a way that it points us back to ourselves rather than blaming things on the transits. The other thing that's really nice about astrology is if you're using it in a way where it's a self-illuminating tool and it's being used for awakening, is this concept of like self, not self. So I'm sure many of you have had the experience of like waking up one day and realizing that something feels off, like there's just something not right. It's in the air. You get on Facebook and maybe other people are saying that as well. Like I'm really tired today, or yeah, I feel on edge, or there's a sense of impending doom in the collective. And what humans have the tendency of doing is then going and looking for a story to justify that, like, why do I feel so weird? What's happening? And then you run into your husband and in the kitchen and he's a little off, and you then realize that he's been off for a few days, and you attach yourself to the story that perhaps the reason you're feeling so weird is because this other person is bringing strange energy into the house. Or, you know, something happens early in the morning and you attach yourself to that because we want to justify the why behind all of the sensations we have, because humans who are highly lunar beings attached to the moon are pattern generating machines, which means that we need story, we need context, we need a why, we need a narrative. We are always looking to create meaning in our lives. And having a really good relationship to astrology, what we can do in those times where we wake up and we find that something strange is brewing in the collective. And if we're using, and we're on the path of awakening and nothing's happened to create that sensation in us, we can take a step back, a moment to reflect. And if we understand astrology, perhaps there's an eclipse happening right then. And instead of attaching ourselves to some story or generating a narrative that really makes us miserable, like it can leave us with a sense of powerlessness, like somebody's mood in the house, or affecting your mood and making you feel less than happy and positive, can really be a very disempowering story to have attached to. But if you know, like, oh, we're having these really strong eclipses in Scorpio, and this kind of sense of separation and underworld thematics, and this like kind of sense of being in the liminal and having the unconscious stirred up is quite normal during a scorpionic eclipse or any kind of scorpionic energy. And so it allows us to detach from that feeling and not grasp onto needing a, a justification for having a sensation. And so astrology, when you're really tuned in and you're using your body as like a vessel to be clear, like a clear channel that can navigate the energy with laser precision, you're able to really parse out the threads of like what's mine and what's not mine, what's like an archetypal theme that's influencing the collective. I know I said a lot there, and I didn't give you a lot of the house, which is part of what we cover in the Venus class. And I wanted to, there's this piece of writing that is attached to the top of my Facebook page. And it's attached to the group. And it talks a little bit about astrologically, like how the planets that are involved in creating that beautiful Venus star, that mandala or rose, the Venus celestial rose in the sky. And so I wanted to just kind of read this piece of writing and then talk about it really quickly. So the Venus cycle has a unique relationship to the sun and moon. It is the sun, moon, and Venus together that create that gorgeous pattern. And it's the sun and Venus that create the gorgeous pattern. And it is the moon's relationship to that creates the gateways that we move through with the Venus cycle. From an esoteric perspective, the sun is related to the consciousness that bears the mystery of all creation. It is the original and sustaining spark of life. So the sun is always related to life force and consciousness. Every time we awaken to something, that is the energy of the sun. Anytime we are conscious of something, that is the sun. Well, the moon relates to our psyche, our subconscious patterning, and it is thought to mediate the realm between the conscious and unconscious, helping us to move between the unknown and the known. And so if we think about the moon cycle every month, she's going from dark, which represents the unconscious, that like well, that void of chaotic creation, that fertile darkness. And then throughout the month, she moves to this grand brightness and then darkens again. And so she's like this mediator of bringing stuff up from the unconscious and making it known. And she does that through pattern work by allowing us to observe our patterns and to break them, because now they have moved from the unconscious into the conscious. And we can start to see like, wow, this always happens, like when I'm right about here, this always happens. And then we're able to dig into the why behind that. Like, for instance, if I ever talk about somebody, I have permission to speak about like some piece using anonymity. But for instance, like I have a client who has trouble completing things, like goals that she sets for herself. And what happens is like right about the point where the work becomes kind of mundane, like it loses its spark of fun, of sensation. When we begin something fun, it's high sensation, it's exciting, it's new. And so as soon as she gets into the grunt part of the work, just the day-to-day, needing to essentially practice the thing, she ends up grabbing onto something else and changing her mind and starting a new project and not finishing that one. And so we were able to parse out that pattern and see that like she grew up in a situation that was highly chaotic and had a lot of high sensation. And she really likes the shiny object. And that feels much more comfortable for her to be in a high sensation kind of with the newness factor that enlivens her system than it is for her to be in something calm. She was able to do that through just tuning in and observing her nervous system and how it felt. And it gave her the ability then to notice when she was starting to dissociate and then look outside for new projects. And she was able to push through that and then, complete finally a goal that she had, just because she noticed where the pattern would take her away from where she wanted to go. So that's just a short example of the types of things that we'll be working with the moon. And so then Venus herself in the cycle, she serves to transform knowledge into wisdom. And I wrote that it's through the principle of love, but I really, want, my teacher personally says, like, truth is synonymous with love. And when I first heard that, I was like, really? Because I come from such a new agey kind of love and light background. Like I got into Landmark and did their whole coaching program in my 20s. And then I started in like the new age, like I learned Reiki and Ayurveda and like that whole scene, like 15 years ago, was just very love and light. And many initiations later, I'm no longer like that. But I mean, I came from that background. So hearing that love was synonymous with truth was something I wasn't going to just take at face value. But after having tested that, I am absolutely in agreement that that is a true statement. And so I say it's through the principle of love in this piece of writing, but it is actually through the principle of truth that Venus transforms knowledge into wisdom. It's that idea of learning how we know something. It's a real practice to embody knowing or embody gnosis. And it's a practice that we'll go over. It's not something I can really explain to your mind in this time, but it's learning to cultivate how we know something, like in our bones, this like intuitive wisdom, and like where does that come from, and how is that different from consciousness or information or knowledge? How do we create wisdom? And Venus does that when she's working with these two bodies. She's the kind of mediator between all of the juice. She takes in through her senses these patterns that the moon is creating through the emotional body, which is the moon, and with the consciousness and the life force of the sun. Venus is able to take all of those in and create gnosis. And gnosis is really what we're after if we're going to be a fully ensouled being. Like if we're going to really live in alignment with our mission, purpose, and intention in life, we have to be aligned with being able to generate gnosis. And so I thought, I don't want to do long teachings, but I did want to make sure that, there was some more information about how we're going to be working in these cycles and inside the Venus container. So, and I don't want to do it through a bunch of mind food. Like I can tell you exactly what we're going to do, but it's not the same as the experience of it. And so I'm purposely being just kind of a tad bit veiled. The other thing I do want to say before anyone comes in, if anyone chooses to join, I want to give this tidbit about the way I personally work. So when I was doing my Landmark work back in my early 20s, it's like almost 20 years ago now, one of the things they said in our first workshop was, you'll never get the experience of growth if you don't approach it like play and like it's an experiment. So once you make a distinction about something, or you realize there's some area of your life that needs to transform, if you don't approach it like, how can I tweak this to be different? How can I show up different? How can I break the pattern in a different way? If you don't approach that like it's play and experimental and fun, the work becomes too hard. And one of the things that I really have learned, like in the past couple of years in my own spiritual work, is this, my teacher has really honed this in for us, is this idea of being human and having a wide breadth of approval and permission for your humanity. So that's like the ability to make mistakes. So when you marry those two, the idea that all of the work we're doing is supposed to be the growth work, fun and experimental, the like trying new things. And we have a wide breadth of permission to be human and not get it right, and not show up as perfect. And we're having fun in the experimental part of breaking patterns. And then, like once we break a pattern, we realize that that pattern was part of a not self pattern. And so the experience of coming into the body and embodying gnosis has to be fun. It has to be thought of as like, okay, it's just an experiment. So if it doesn't work, I didn't fail. I'm not good. It's not like I tried so hard and I didn't get it right, so I'm not doing it right. We have to approach the work like it's fun, and like, we're human. And so we have a ton of permission to be messy in our practice and to not get any part of this right. And so that's what I wanted to say. I wanted to talk a little bit about how Venus and the Venus cycle can be a path of awakening and embodiment. Of course, there's so much more in there. And then there's the practice piece. But yeah, just mentioning those things that will be part of our journey. My intention with the Venus SkyDancer course is essentially to hand you the keys to my spiritual path, the keys to my own practice. And so, yes, there's a lot of astrology and Venusian mysteries involved in that, which is stuff that we will learn in the course. But there's also this real element of, to be, for a lack of a better word, on the Venusian mystery path, there's this, like when we bring it down to the quintessence, it's about gnosis. It's about how through our own sensory perception, we know, with a G, like gnosis, and having our bodies really become a vessel of gnosis. And, the people who can just pick up on things, who just kind of see something and they immediately intuitively know something's off, that's somebody who's got a real connection with Venus, because she's using her body and her senses to inform her experience. So, all right, lovelies, this was my short, a little extra piece about SkyDancer. It is open for enrollment now. I don't presume that we'll have a gigantic course. I'm not doing like a major launch where I'm, I don't presume that I'll like sponsor ads for it. I'm not sure yet. I mean, depending if enrollment's super low, I might do something like that. But, I just would like to get a nice intimate group together to do the journey. And because of that, I feel like I can be a bit I can afford to be diplomatic about times and dates that we meet. So I don't have those together yet, because what I'd like to do is see if there's a time that everyone can be together. And because I know that I've got people interested in Europe, which is a few hours ahead of us in the States, I just want to see what the group, like the makeup of the group is, and then perhaps poll and see if we can't get at least one or maybe two times that we can oscillate between together. So, and I'm thinking that we'll do some foundations work as people come in. So you'll be added to a private portal on my website that's already got Venus information loaded, and that's the foundational piece of this work before we start at the root chakra. The root chakra meeting between Venus and the moon happens December 24th. So my intention is to get everybody enrolled and then into that like foundational module, and then begin the work at the root chakra, like the official beginning. We probably can't meet the 24th because it happens to be Christmas Eve, but in and around that date will be the actual start date, or the like official kind of opening ceremony for us to begin. And yeah, and if you have any questions, again, I'm not launching this to thousands of people, so just feel free to inbox me or message me here. And the application has some more kind of logistical information, and the energy exchange is on the application, which can be found at the SkyDancer webpage, and I'll put that in the comments here. So, all right, hope this was helpful. Thank you. Talk to you soon.